There is a strange paradox woven through life. The people who know the least often speak with the most conviction, while those who have truly wrestled with knowledge carry themselves with quiet restraint. It is as if ignorance demands an audience, and wisdom seeks a silent room. We live in an era where loudness is mistaken for depth, confidence is mistaken for clarity, and the constant broadcasting of opinions has replaced actual understanding. Everywhere you look, the world rewards volume more than virtue. A person argues not because they wish to understand, but because they fear losing. They push their words into every available silence, terrified that quiet might reveal how little substance lies behind the noise. They wear certainty like a mask, hoping no one notices the insecurity trembling beneath it. The Stoics understood this long before our age of scrolling outrage and instant commentary. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that if someone is mistaken, you should try to gently guide them, but if they refuse to be guided, you should simply bear with them, not because you approve, but because wrestling with arrogance is pointless. You cannot reason with someone whose goal is not truth, but victory. What you can do is protect your peace. You can shield your clarity and your time. You can learn to recognize the unmistakable signs of foolishness. Not to judge others harshly, but to navigate the world with better footing, and to avoid becoming the very thing you criticize. This expanded guide explores 8 defining behaviors that reveal a foolish mind, 8 habits that drain your energy, distort your perception, and hinder your growth if you entertain them too long. And while these signs help you spot foolishness in others, their deeper value lies in turning the mirror toward yourself. Because often, what irritates us most in others is the very thing we quietly battle within. Stay until the end. The final sign has a way of planting itself in your mind and challenging the way you see your own reactions. Let's begin. 1. They speak before they think. There is a certain kind of person who treats silence like an enemy. The moment a pause enters a conversation, even a gentle, natural one, they rush to fill it with words, as though quiet were an accusation. They speak reflexively, impulsively, unfiltered. To them, talking feels like proof of intelligence, and the absence of sound feels like failure. But talkativeness is not the same as wisdom. In fact, the more a person insists on speaking, the more clearly you can witness how shallow their thinking really is. The Stoics held silence with the same reverence they held courage. They believed that words should be tools, not toys, used carefully, not carelessly. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno, warned that it is better to stumble with your feet than with your tongue. A physical stumble wounds only the body, but a reckless word wounds your character. A fool reveals himself not by what he knows, but by what he cannot stop saying. His mouth becomes a window into a restless mind, a mind that never pauses long enough to examine itself. We all know this person, the one who narrates every thought as if it were profound, the one who dominates conversations without offering anything of value. They do not ask questions because questions require humility. They do not listen because listening implies they might not know everything already. Instead, they talk to prove they exist, to affirm their place in a room, to drown out the discomfort of introspection. Speech becomes their shield, thin, rattling, and transparent. A person who talks excessively is not only careless with their words, they are careless with their perception. They miss the nuance between sentences, the emotion beneath tone, the truth that hides in silence. They confuse speed with insight, noise with intelligence, and reaction with understanding. Fools talk in order to be heard. The wise talk in order to understand. The Stoic talks only when speech serves a purpose greater than silence. To the Stoic, silence is not empty. It is a forge. It is a space where impulse cools into clarity, where emotion settles into logic, where truth gathers before being released. Every thoughtful person understands the value of the pause, the sacred gap between stimulus and response. Watch closely in your daily interactions. You will see how quickly people expose themselves when they speak too soon. They reveal fear in their certainty, insecurity in their volume, ignorance in their speed. They are incapable of the simple act of waiting, because waiting forces them to face their own thoughts, and those thoughts frighten them far more than any external challenge. Marcus Aurelius urges readers to treat words as moral acts. If something is not true, he said, do not say it. If something is not right, do not do it. Speech is not merely communication. It is an extension of character. It is a declaration of your discipline or your lack of it. This is why wise people speak less. They are too busy observing. They are too busy refining their understanding. They are too aware of the weight of words to toss them carelessly into the air. When they finally do speak, their words land with impact because silence has shaped them. Contrast this with the modern world, where everyone is a platform but fewer and fewer people have purpose. We live in an age where people speak to be seen, not to contribute, where arguments are entertainment, not inquiry, where loudness acts as a currency, traded cheaply for attention. But the Stoic refuses to participate in that economy. He values presence over performance. He responds slowly, intentionally. When others rush to express themselves, he chooses to observe. When others demand a reaction, he chooses composure. Silence unsettles insecure people because silence is immune to argument. It offers no foothold for conflict. It undermines the person who relies on emotional volatility to maintain control. Imagine two individuals in a heated argument. One is yelling, gesturing wildly, desperate to impose his perspective. The other listens calmly, speaks sparingly, and ends a conflict with a single measured sentence. The contrast is obvious. One person has lost control of himself. The other has mastered himself. True strength does not shout. True power does not demand. True confidence does not scramble for attention. A disciplined tongue is sharper than any insult. It dismantles chaos simply by refusing to participate. It demonstrates mastery without raising its volume. The Stoic does not need to win the argument. He simply refuses to lose himself. And in a world addicted to reaction, nothing is more rebellious than restraint. Nothing is more powerful than choosing not to speak when speaking adds nothing. Nothing is more impressive than someone whose silence carries more weight than another's speech. Do not let the noise of others deceive you into thinking noise equals influence. Do not confuse confidence with wisdom or certainty with truth. Speak only when your words will add value, never merely volume. Wisdom does not race. It resonates. Silence, when chosen with intention, becomes a form of speech that cannot be ignored. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. Silence is the language of those who have mastered themselves. 2. They get offended by truth. A peculiar trait defines a foolish mind. It does not fear lies, but it trembles before truth. Lies are comforting. Lies preserve ego. Lies allow a person to maintain the illusion that they are never wrong, never flawed, never in need of change. Truth, on the other hand, threatens everything the fool has built his identity upon. Truth does not wound the body. It wounds the ego. And the ego reacts like a wounded animal, quickly, defensively, irrationally. When you speak an honest observation to a foolish person, you can almost see the transformation happen in real time. Their posture stiffens, their face tightens, their voice sharpens. It is as though the truth has touched a nerve they spend their entire life trying to protect. They do not evaluate what you said. They attack why you said it. They question your tone, your motives, your authority to speak. Anything to avoid looking into the mirror truth places in front of them. The fool does not resist the message. He resists the reflection. To admit you are wrong requires inner strength, a kind of quiet, mature courage that the foolish lack entirely. Admitting a flaw means confronting oneself, and confrontation with the self is the terrain the fool never wants to enter. His entire identity rests on fragile foundations, and truth feels like an earthquake. Marcus Aurelius once advised that if someone corrects you and reveals an error in your thinking, you should see it as a gift, not an insult, not an attack. A gift, because it hands you the opportunity to become better than you were a moment ago. This is how the wise view truth, as a tool of refinement, not an instrument of humiliation. But to the foolish, truth is an intrusion, an unwelcome guest breaking into the comfortable home of delusion. They prefer flattery over accuracy, comfort over clarity, compliments over growth. They would rather hear a soothing lie than face an uncomfortable truth. This is why foolish people gravitate toward echo chambers. They seek people who reassure them, not challenge them. They surround themselves with those who will protect their fragile worldview, not sharpen it. Their relationships become mirrors, only reflecting what they want to see, never what they need to see. Surrounded by approval, affirmed by shallow praise, they misinterpret comfort as validation. And then, when someone speaks honestly, gently, or firmly, it cracks the illusion. The fool reacts not with curiosity, but with hostility. You may have seen this many times. Someone receives constructive criticism meant to help them grow, and instead of reflecting, they become cold, defensive, even accusatory. You're being negative. Why are you attacking me? Who are you to judge? You're just jealous. The fool reframes truth as an insult so he can protect his pride. But no amount of emotional defense will ever change reality. Truth does not bend itself for anyone. Seneca warned that no person heals by denying their wound. Imagine someone with a deep cut who refuses to look at it. They claim it is small, or that it isn't their fault, or that someone else caused it, or that it doesn't matter. The wound only deepens, festers, and grows worse with time. In the same way, avoiding truth deepens inner corruption. A wound ignored becomes an infection. A weakness unexamined becomes a pattern. A flaw denied becomes a destiny. The wise understand this. The fool does not. To the Stoics, truth was not a weapon. It was medicine, bitter at first, but healing in the end. This is why the wise do not fear correction. They welcome it. They know that truth, even when painful, helps them evolve. They treat every criticism as data, every correction as guidance, every honest observation as an opportunity to refine themselves. But fools grow angry at the very thing that could save them. When you speak truth and someone becomes offended, remember this. It is not you they are fighting. It is their own reflection. A person at war with truth is actually at war with themselves. They cling to denial because denial allows them to maintain the illusion of competence. But illusion is a delicate thing. One gust of honesty, and the entire identity they constructed begins to crumble. Do not waste your energy defending the truth to someone who fears it. Do not argue with a person determined to misunderstand you. Do not try to convince someone whose ego has barricaded the door to their mind. Truth does not need defenders. It merely needs time. The Stoic does not chase validation from those who are committed to deception. Not deception of others, but self-deception. He lets truth speak for itself and refuses to enter battles that lead nowhere. He knows that arguing with someone who is allergic to truth is like discussing fire safety with a person holding a lit match over a pool of gasoline. There is nothing to win and everything to lose. When a foolish person rejects truth, remain composed. They are not rejecting you. They are rejecting reality. Let their reaction reveal their character. The Stoics emphasize a powerful lesson. You cannot control whether others accept the truth. You can only control whether you remain centered when they reject it. That is real power. Calm in chaos, clarity in distortion. A fool may feel threatened by truth, but a wise person is strengthened by it. Truth bruises the ego but strengthens the mind. 3. They blame everyone but themselves. Nothing reveals the maturity of a person more clearly than how they respond when something goes wrong. When life becomes difficult, when plans collapse, when consequences arrive, this is the moment you truly see the inner structure of someone's character. And the fool has one defining reaction. It's never their fault. Ask them why they failed, why something went wrong, why they are stuck, and you will hear a familiar song, played in a dozen variations but always with the same chorus. It wasn't me. The foolish mind cannot withstand the weight of responsibility. Responsibility requires awareness. It demands humility. It forces a person to acknowledge that they are not only the author of their victories, but also the architect of their failures. And that is too heavy a truth for the ego of a fool to carry. So they create an alternative reality where someone else is always at fault. If they lose a job, their boss is toxic. If their relationship fails, their partner was unreasonable. If they procrastinate, conditions weren't ideal. If they miss opportunities, someone sabotaged them. If they repeat the same mistakes, life is unfair. A fool constructs a worldview in which they are always the victim, never the cause. And here lies the tragedy. The moment you place blame outside yourself, you sacrifice your ability to change your circumstances. You trade power for comfort. You trade growth for the illusion of innocence. Fools would rather feel blameless than become better. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus taught that the greatest danger is not external misfortune, but the refusal to see a role in creating it. A person who refuses to accept responsibility becomes a prisoner in their own life, held hostage by circumstances they claim to have no control over. Blaming others is not simply a flaw. It is a form of self-imprisonment. The wise person understands something the fool never does. If you cause even a small part of your problem, then you have the power to fix it. If you contributed to your suffering, you can also contribute to your healing. Responsibility is not a burden. It is freedom. But freedom can feel frightening to those who have trained themselves to rely on excuses. When you live without excuses, you lose the luxury of victimhood. You lose the comfort of saying, "It's not my fault." You lose the ability to hide from yourself. And most people are terrified of meeting themselves. Blame becomes a shield, one they never put down. Blame becomes a blanket, warm, comfortable, suffocating. Blame becomes a habit, easy, automatic, destructive. The most dangerous part is that the fool believes these stories. They are not lying to others. They are lying to themselves. Self-deception becomes their primary coping mechanism, a way to escape the discomfort of growth. The mind of a fool is allergic to accountability, so it fabricates innocence in every situation, even when the evidence shows otherwise. Instead of improving their character, they improve their excuses. And with every excuse, their life shrinks, their potential shrinks, their future shrinks. If you want to understand the psychology of blame, observe what happens when a fool encounters adversity. They panic, not because the situation is difficult, but because difficulty exposes their own shortcomings. Instead of fixing the root problem, they divert attention towards some external force. They blame people, circumstances, timing, luck, upbringing, environment, anything that allows them to remain unchanged. This is why a fool repeats the same mistake for years. You cannot grow beyond your excuses. You cannot evolve while protecting your ego. You cannot improve without admitting where you went wrong. Blame is the enemy of progress. The Stoics understood that life is a mixture of what we control and what we do not. Wisdom is the ability to distinguish between the two. Fools blur this line intentionally. They place almost everything in the outside my control category, so they can avoid responsibility. A fool says, "I had no choice." A wise person asks, "What choices did I overlook?" A fool says, "I was forced into this." A wise person says, "What could I have done differently?" A fool says, "This isn't my fault." A wise person says, "What part of this is mine to own?" Ownership is the doorway to transformation. Blame, on the other hand, locks the door and throws away the key. Nothing is more liberating than realizing your life does not improve by chance. It improves by change. But change requires confronting the uncomfortable truth that you are responsible for shaping your reality. Fools hate this truth. The wise embrace it. The more responsibility you accept, the more power you gain. You begin to see life differently. Instead of being pushed around by circumstances, you become an active force. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond intentionally. Instead of complaining, you take action. This is the essence of Stoicism. Not to control everything, but to control yourself within everything. When you meet someone who blames everyone else, recognize this. You are speaking with someone who has surrendered their agency. They are not dangerous, but they are draining. They are not evil, but they are exhausting. They are not malicious, but they are incapable of growth. A fool's life will never change because they believe they have no role in changing it. Avoid their mindset. Protect your energy. And above all, resist the temptation to become like them. Because at some point in life, every person faces a moment where blame is easy, tempting, comforting. But every time you choose blame, you rob your future self of strength. You rob yourself of the lessons that hardship offers. You rob yourself of the ability to grow into someone capable, responsible, resilient. Blame gives you short-term comfort. Responsibility gives you long-term power. Choose power. For they refuse to listen or learn. Knowledge is not a trophy to be displayed. It is a river to be navigated. The wise understand that learning is a continuous journey, a lifelong practice, an unending dialogue between oneself and the world. The foolish, however, act as though every lesson has already been learned, every truth has already been discovered, and every opinion that does not mirror their own is irrelevant. Fools do not listen. They wait. They do not absorb. They react. They do not consider. They defend. Every conversation becomes a competition. Every correction becomes an attack. Every perspective that challenges their worldview becomes a threat to their identity. The fool is so entangled in the need to appear correct that the very act of listening becomes impossible. Arrogance is a soil in which this behavior flourishes. A person who believes they know everything cannot imagine a world in which they might be wrong. Pride becomes a barricade, a wall separating them from truth. Advice slides off them like rain on wax. Correction is met with defensiveness, guidance with suspicion, insight with contempt. And the cycle continues, stubbornness breeding stagnation, certainty breeding ignorance. Seneca once wrote, "While we teach, we learn." It is a simple truth, yet profoundly neglected. Every interaction is an opportunity for growth. Every difference of opinion is a mirror revealing what we do not yet understand. Every failure is a teacher disguised as discomfort. The fool refuses all three. Humility, the willingness to admit, "I may not know," is the soil in which wisdom grows. Without it, knowledge cannot take root. A mind closed to learning remains static, rigid, and brittle. And yet, the fool convinces himself that resistance is strength, and ignorance is confidence. Look closely at the behavior of those who refuse to learn. You will notice a pattern. They dismiss ideas immediately without consideration. They argue to be right rather than to understand. They treat disagreement as disrespect. They cling to their mistakes as though repetition confers wisdom. The tragedy is that these people are not lacking intelligence. They are lacking humility. Intelligence is useless without self-awareness. Knowledge is powerless without reflection. Listening is meaningless without the courage to be changed by what you hear. The wise, by contrast, approach every situation as a teacher and a student simultaneously. They listen deeply, not just to respond, but to understand. They seek correction, not confrontation. They welcome challenge, not because it affirms their ego, but because it expands their capacity for insight. Marcus Aurelius expressed the Stoic principle clearly. "If someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change, for it is truth I seek, not pride." Here lies a profound distinction between the foolish and the wise. One measures their identity by being right. The other measures their growth by being correct. Modern life presents this challenge everywhere. On social media, on the news, at work, in personal relationships. The pattern repeats. Many believe knowledge can be acquired passively through scrolling, listening superficially, or absorbing opinions without interrogation. They confuse information for understanding. They mistake awareness of ideas for mastery of principles. They fear being shown their errors because errors expose their incompetence. To truly learn, one must admit imperfection. One must face the discomfort of not knowing. One must be willing to abandon the familiar for the sake of clarity. The foolish fear this humility. The wise embrace it. Listening is more than hearing. Listening is presence. Listening is the discipline of pausing before responding. Listening is the act of submitting your mind temporarily to the idea that you may not yet understand. The foolish cannot do this. They respond instantly, react impulsively, and interpret any challenge to their assumptions as an attack. They remain trapped in a cycle of self-reinforced ignorance. The consequences are clear. Relationships falter. Opportunities slip away. Growth stagnates. Insight remains just beyond reach. They remain forever beginners in a world that prizes adaptability and discernment. By contrast, the Stoic's mind is always open. He seeks correction. He measures the quality of his thoughts against reality, not opinion. He knows that being wrong is a necessary precursor to being right. He does not fear it. He leans into it. True intelligence is elastic. It bends. It adapts. It absorbs. The fool is rigid. He believes that bending is weakness, but rigidity ensures fracture. Flexibility ensures survival and growth. Every failure, every piece of advice, every critique These are gifts if you have the humility to receive them. The fool discards these gifts. He clings instead to ego, comfort, and the illusion of infallibility. Notice the signs in the people around you. Who refuses to listen? Who refuses to learn? Who argues only to defend their own view rather than to expand it? These are the ones who will remain stagnant. These are the ones who confuse pride with power and obstinacy with wisdom. And notice the signs within yourself. The trap is not only external. Every human mind occasionally refuses correction. Every human ego occasionally recoils from humility. The difference lies in whether you habitually embrace feedback or habitually resist it. The wise person cultivates listening like a skill, like a muscle. They test their beliefs, refine their understanding, and adjust their behavior based on observation and reflection. They understand that the path to mastery is paved with moments of correction. The fool, however, believes that resisting correction proves strength. In reality, it proves only stagnation. The Stoic knows that the mind, like a sword, dulls if unused. It must be sharpened daily through observation, through inquiry, through humility, and through the deliberate practice of listening. The fool neglects this practice. He fears it, and in doing so, he remains perpetually blunt, incapable of cutting through illusion, incapable of seeing truth, incapable of acting wisely. The distinction is simple yet profound. The fool resists correction and remains unchanged. The wise seek correction and evolve. The Stoic listens more than he speaks, learns more than he defends, and grows with every proof of his error. The key is humility and the courage to admit imperfection. True mastery comes not from always being right, but from being willing to be wrong, over and over, until the pattern of your thinking aligns with reality. 5. They chase attention, not improvement. In today's world, visibility has become a substitute for value. Likes, shares, comments, applause, approval. They have replaced actual achievement in the eyes of many. The foolish mind measures its worth not by the depth of its understanding, the quality of its actions, or the strength of its character, but by the attention it receives. The louder, the more visible, the more admired, the more it believes itself to exist. Attention is intoxicating because it feels like validation. It temporarily fills the empty spaces where self-respect and discipline should live. A fool mistakes these fleeting moments of recognition for lasting accomplishment. He performs, he postures, he broadcasts, but he rarely builds. The Stoics, however, understood a crucial truth. External praise is ephemeral, fragile, and ultimately meaningless. It is wind that moves with the light, a shadow cast by the perception of others, not a reflection of reality. To pursue it is to pursue illusion. Consider the modern social landscape. Every platform rewards the spectacular rather than the substantive. People post moments of achievement while neglecting the hard, quiet work that truly generates results. They measure themselves against the applause of strangers rather than the standards of personal excellence. The fool is enslaved by the cycle. The more attention he receives, the more he craves. The more he performs, the less authentic he becomes. Improvement, by contrast, often occurs in silence. Real growth is rarely noticed. It requires consistency without recognition, discipline without reward, practice without applause. The Stoic builds character quietly, not to be seen, but to become capable. Attention is addictive because it mimics love, but love strengthens. Attention drains. A person who confuses the two spends their life chasing illusions while ignoring the work that cultivates genuine strength. The fool seeks admiration, even if it requires dishonesty. He will perform virtues he does not possess, adopt opinions he does not believe, and alters behavior to fit the preferences of his audience. Every act is a performance. Every interaction is a stage. The result is a life built on external validation, fragile and unsustainable. The Stoic, in contrast, cultivates internal standards. His sense of worth comes from his integrity, not others' perception of it. He asks daily, "What can I improve today?" rather than, "Who is watching me today?" He measures success by progress, not praise, by action, not attention, by discipline, not applause. Consider the subtle ways this plays out in daily life. A person posts achievements online not to celebrate growth, but to harvest recognition. A person interrupts conversations not to contribute, but to ensure all eyes are on them. A person adopts trends, opinions, or practices, not because they are right, but because they are visible. These behaviors are symptoms of a mind enthralled by external perception rather than internal progress. They indicate insecurity, masquerading as confidence. They betray a lack of self-control, self-respect, and self-mastery. The pursuit of attention is seductive because it offers immediate feedback, instant gratification, and illusion of importance. But the Stoic knows that short-term reward often sabotages long-term growth. Focusing on what others see erodes focus on what truly matters. The solution is deceptively simple. Invest in yourself when no one is watching. Work quietly. Improve consistently. Master skills that do not confer immediate recognition. Develop character that cannot be flaunted. These are acts of resistance in a world obsessed with image over substance. This approach also strengthens resilience. When you no longer depend on attention for validation, you become unshakable. Criticism cannot wound you. Praise cannot inflate you. You act according to principle, not performance. You measure your life by progress, not approval. Seneca reminds us that suffering comes more from imagination than reality. For the fool, suffering often manifests as fear being unnoticed, ignored, or undervalued. The illusion that attention equals worth traps him in perpetual anxiety and distraction. The Stoic sees through this mirage. He cultivates value that is independent of recognition. In practice, this looks like performing acts of excellence without announcing them, developing expertise quietly without showcasing it unnecessarily, speaking truth when necessary, not for applause, living in alignment with principles, even when unseen. This mindset transforms life. You no longer chase reactions. You cultivate mastery. You no longer surrender control to the whims of others. You build internal sovereignty. The foolish, on the other hand, remain slaves to perception. Their energy is scattered. Their focus is superficial. Their growth is stunted. They exist in a constant state of performance, never arriving at the calm, deliberate strength that comes from self-reliance. Ask yourself, are your actions performed for attention or for improvement? Do you work to be seen, or do you work to be capable? Are you building internal wealth, or are you trading your time and energy for fleeting applause? The answer reveals your alignment with wisdom or folly. The key distinction is clear. Fools chase validation and applause. The wise chase mastery and self-improvement. The Stoic invests in the work no one sees, knowing that true strength does not require an audience. 6. They repeat mistakes and call experience. There is a subtle, insidious form of self-deception that defines a foolish mind, the belief that repetition equals wisdom. A fool will claim experience simply because he has been through it before, as though merely surviving an error or enduring misfortune confers understanding. But experience without reflection is endurance, not growth. Surviving the same mistake twice, thrice, or 100 times does not make one wise. It makes one habitual in failure. Wisdom is not a record of repeated errors. It is the insight gleaned from them, the lessons integrated, the changes made. The fool confuses activity for progress. He confuses familiarity with mastery. He confuses repetition with growth. And in doing so, he binds himself to an endless cycle of stagnation. Consider the typical pattern of the fool. He falls into the same relational traps, choosing similar partners who reflect the flaws he refuses to confront in himself. He makes the same professional errors, disregarding the feedback he receives and blaming circumstances when failure repeats. He succumbs to the same destructive habits, interpreting them as personality traits rather than opportunities for transformation. Every repetition, unexamined, becomes a reinforcement of limitation. The fool tells himself he is seasoned, experienced, mature, but the evidence shows only the persistence of ignorance. The Stoics approach life differently. To them, every failure, every setback, every misstep is a mirror, an opportunity to observe, analyze, and adjust. Reflection turns repetition into insight. Each mistake becomes a blueprint for mastery. The Stoic asks not, why is this happening to me? But, what am I still refusing to see? What am I still refusing to change? Seneca wrote, It is human to err, but a persistent error is foolish. This is the fundamental divide between the fool and the wise. Error is inevitable. Ignoring it is optional. The consequences of ignoring error are profound. A person who refuses to learn from their mistakes traps themselves in a self-perpetuating cycle. Pain repeats, frustration deepens, relationships falter, opportunities vanish, and character stagnates. What appears as external misfortune is often internal neglect. Life does not punish arbitrarily. It teaches persistently. The fool believes life is unfair because the same difficulties return again and again. But the Stoic sees each recurrence as the universe's patient teacher, insisting that the lesson not yet learned will be presented until it is. Misfortune, hardship, failure, these are not punishments. They are curricula. They are exercises in discipline, reflection, and adaptation. To break this cycle requires humility, courage, and self-examination. One must face the uncomfortable truth that one's own choices, habits, and perspectives are the source of repeated setbacks. One must embrace the work of transformation rather than continue the theater of excuses. The fool avoids this work. He repeats patterns and rationalizes them. That's just how I am. I guess this is my luck. I can't help it. Each excuse is a brick in the prison of self-deception, confining potential and foreclosing growth. Each rationalization distances him further from wisdom, making future errors more likely. The Stoic, in contrast, cultivates a mindset of continuous correction. Mistakes are data. Failures are teachers. Errors are maps pointing toward improvement. Reflection transforms experience into knowledge. Action transforms knowledge into mastery. Notice how people around you approach repetition. Some stumble, analyze, and adjust. Others stumble, deny, and repeat. The difference is in attitude, discipline, and courage. It is the same with yourself. Recognize where repetition lurks in your own behavior. Observe your habits, relationships, and decisions. Ask, am I learning or merely enduring? A fool mistakes endurance for wisdom. A wise person converts endurance into understanding. A Stoic converts understanding into mastery. Repeated failure without reflection is a slow form of self-destruction. It reinforces patterns of thought and behavior that weaken character and diminish agency. The fool becomes hardened in ignorance. The world becomes a series of frustrations and betrayals because he refuses to examine the source. He blames fate instead of his own choices, and his pain becomes permanent. The Stoic understands that repetition is not the enemy. It is the teacher. He does not resist it, nor does he fear it. He approaches each recurrence with curiosity. What did I miss the first time? What lesson did I avoid? How can I act differently now? This mindset transforms the cyclical nature of life into a ladder of progress rather than a hamster wheel of frustration. Every moment of discomfort, every encounter with failure is an opportunity. The difference lies in whether you extract a lesson or repeat the error. Consider the small decisions we make every day. Choosing the same impulsive reaction in conflict, reverting to the same unhelpful habits under stress, responding to criticism defensively rather than reflectively. Each repetition is a test of whether we have integrated insight or remain chained to habit. The fool fails these tests repeatedly, calling mere survival experience. The wise pass them deliberately, calling learned patterns wisdom. Remember, the universe is patient. It repeats lessons until we internalize them. It does not grow impatient. Only we do, through frustration or resignation. The Stoic embraces repetition as a curriculum, knowing that the path to mastery requires persistence, observation, and reflection. Ask yourself, are my repeated struggles evidence of misfortune or mislessons? Are my setbacks invitations to reflection or excuses for stagnation? Do I persist blindly, or do I extract insight from each experience? To live wisely is to convert repetition into refinement. To persist blindly is to convert life into suffering. 7. They confuse confidence with competence. Confidence is seductive. Competence is earned. The fool mistakes the first for the second. He believes that the louder he speaks, the more capable he becomes. That certainty equals skill. That self-assurance can substitute for understanding. In a world that rewards boldness over depth, this illusion flourishes. The danger is subtle. Confidence feels real, even when it is unfounded. A person who talks loudly, makes sweeping claims, and displays unshakable self-belief can appear competent. Others may be fooled, and the person himself may come to believe the deception. But competence is quiet. Competence does not announce itself. Competence withstands scrutiny. Competence is a product of mastery, preparation, and relentless practice, not of volume or bravado. The fool, intoxicated by his own certainty, rarely questions himself. He rarely tests his assumptions. He rarely considers that his perception may be incomplete or that his knowledge may be shallow. He asserts, declares, and judges, confusing these acts with mastery. And the result is predictable. Failure, misjudgment, and frustration. Epictetus observed, "A man cannot learn what he thinks he already knows." This principle explains why so many confident individuals repeatedly stumble. Their arrogance is a self-imposed barrier to learning. Confidence without humility is a cage. It keeps the mind from bending, adapting, and absorbing new insights. The Stoics understood this distinction. True confidence is earned through effort, experience, and reflection. It is rooted in understanding, not in the perception of others. It does not require applause or recognition. It is stable, measured, and silent. Contrast the fool and the wise in practice. The fool speaks first, assumes knowledge, and fears doubt. The wise listens first, evaluates evidence, and accepts uncertainty. The fool fears admitting ignorance. The wise embraces it as the doorway to learning. Confidence is a tool. Competence is the product. Mistaking the two leads to disaster. The fool may convince others, but eventually reality exposes a gap. The louder his voice, the greater the fall. Observe this in daily life. The co-worker who dominates meetings with unchecked opinions, the social media influencer who projects expertise without understanding, the public figure who commands attention but falters under scrutiny. Their confidence masks incompetence until circumstances demand proof. And when proof is demanded, the illusion crumbles. The Stoic, in contrast, cultivates quiet assurance. His confidence is internal, derived from preparation, observation, and skill. He does not seek validation. He does not perform. He acts from mastery, and his results speak louder than words ever could. The key lesson is simple yet profound. Never trade skill for show. Never let your self-belief outpace your understanding. Confidence without competence is a brittle bridge over a chasm of ignorance. One strong gust of reality is enough to collapse it. Competence, however, is built brick by brick, day by day, silently and deliberately. Notice the subtle arrogance of fool, the assumption that appearances are proof, that certainty is wisdom, that popularity is merit. Each is a deception, a substitute for the hard work required to cultivate real skill. Competence requires patience, humility, and the courage to admit ignorance. Confidence alone can never provide these. True mastery, like a river, flows quietly and steadily. It does not need to announce itself. The fool mistakes the roar of the river for turbulence. He mistakes showmanship for substance. He confuses noise with force, and in doing so, he undermines his own progress. The Stoic teaches, speak with precision, not volume. Act with skill, not pretense. Build knowledge through inquiry, not assertion. Let results, not bravado, define your capability. When you encounter someone who exudes confidence without evidence of competence, recognize the distinction. They are not dangerous, but they are instructive, a mirror of what can happen when ego precedes effort, when certainty replaces curiosity. And look within yourself. Are there moments when you have mistaken self-assurance for real understanding? When you acted boldly without preparation, when you spoke firmly without knowledge? Reflection on these moments is essential to avoid becoming the fool yourself. The Stoic path corrects this tendency. Temper confidence with humility, assert knowledge with proof, and allow competence to grow in silence until it is undeniable. In this way, wisdom replaces illusion, mastery replaces bravado, and true power emerges quietly, steadily, and permanently. 8. They think loud opinions mean strength. The world is filled with noise. Some of it is necessary, some is trivial, but much of it is a desperate clamor of those who mistake volume for power. The fool believes that by speaking loudly, aggressively, or with unyielding certainty, He establishes authority, dominance, and influence. He confuses reaction for control, anger for strength, and opinion for truth. True strength, however, is quiet. True power does not need validation. True influence does not demand attention. The fool seeks the opposite: visibility, affirmation, agreement. He mistakes reactions for respect, echo for understanding, and applause for mastery. Every disagreement becomes a battlefield. Every conversation is a stage for performance. The louder the fool shouts, the more he convinces himself of his own significance. Yet in reality, shouting is often a symptom of insecurity. The louder the noise, the weaker the foundation beneath it. Seneca wisely said, "He who angers you conquers you." The fool does not understand this. In every confrontation, he reacts immediately, as if speed of response equals victory. He mistakes emotional intensity for control. He assumes that winning an argument is equivalent to asserting strength. But strength that depends on noise is not strength. It is exposure. The Stoics, on the other hand, define power differently. They measure it not by how many voices cheered, but by how well one controls oneself. Calm in the face of provocation, restraint in the presence of chaos, and clarity when emotions run high. This is the mark of mastery. Consider how the fool behaves. He interrupts, dominates, and overpowers conversations. He equates loud disagreement with superiority. He believes reaction equates to resolution. He mistakes the discomfort of others for proof of his dominance. All these behaviors are outward signs of inner insecurity. The fool relies on external measures to validate his worth because internal discipline is absent. He cannot tolerate silence because it exposes his dependence on attention and reaction. The Stoic, by contrast, values silence. Silence unsettles the insecure far more than words ever could. It is a tool, a strategy, a measure of composure. By remaining silent in the face of provocation, the Stoic demonstrates control over himself and over the situation. The world reacts to this differently than to shouting. Where loudness invites challenge, calmness commands respect. Consider two people in conflict. One shouts, gesticulates, and demands to be heard. The other listens, considers, and speaks with measured intent. Which one truly controls the exchange? Which one emerges stronger? The answer is always the one who maintains composure. Strength is not demonstrated in volume. It is revealed in restraint. The Stoic teaches that anger burns fast and leaves only ashes. Reaction consumes energy, erodes clarity, and diminishes power. Calm endures. Calm preserves the mind, the body, and the purpose behind action. When the fool reacts immediately, he surrenders his agency. When the Stoic waits, breathes, and responds deliberately, he consolidates his strength. In modern life, this principle is visible everywhere. On social media, in offices and politics, and in daily personal interactions, loud voices dominate the stage. Outrage masquerades as courage, bluster masquerades as authority, and hysteria masquerades as leadership. The fool believes these are indicators of strength. But real strength, the kind that lasts, the kind that commands respect, the kind that produces results, is quiet, patient, and self-controlled. The Stoic responds differently. He does not shout to assert dominance. He speaks to clarify. He does not react to insult. He maintains composure. He does not seek to overpower. He seeks to understand. He does not demand attention. He acts with purpose. Observe the contrast. The louder one is, the more likely he is masking weakness. The calmer one is, the more likely he is embodying mastery. Volume is often the veil covering ignorance. Silence is often the mark of wisdom. The fool believes the world will respect his loudness. The Stoic understands the world will respect only his discipline. True influence is cultivated in composure, persistence, and deliberate action, not in noise, rage, or reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." In other words, do not match foolishness with foolishness. Do not trade calm for chaos. Do not allow the noise of others to dictate your response. Rise above it. Respond with precision, integrity, and silence. Let the fool burn himself out in his own noise while you cultivate quiet strength that endures. In practice, when provoked, pause. Do not react immediately. Observe. When insulted, remain calm. Do not internalize or respond emotionally. When challenged, respond with clarity, not volume. Speak only what adds value. Let results, not words, demonstrate your capability. The fool reacts. The Stoic decides. The fool performs. The Stoic masters. The fool seeks to dominate others. The Stoic seeks to master himself. Real power lives in the space between impulse and action, in the moment when reaction is resisted and choice is deliberate. That is where wisdom triumphs over folly, where calm triumphs over chaos, where true strength is revealed, not in shouting but in restraint. The Stoic path challenges the noisy conventions of the world. It rejects volume as proof of insight. It rejects reaction as proof of control. It rejects spectacle as proof of strength. Instead, it prizes discipline over display, mastery over performance, inner clarity over outward impression. If you wish to test your strength, try remaining silent when provoked. Try listening instead of arguing. Try acting without seeking recognition. Strength is not measured by who yells the loudest. Strength is measured by who remains unshaken, unreactive, and grounded, even when chaos rages around them. In a world that equates loudness with leadership, composure becomes rebellion. Be the quiet one who thinks deeply, acts wisely, and speaks rarely. Let others burn themselves out in noise while you grow in stillness. Storms make sound, but it is the mountain that endures. Calm is the ultimate expression of power. The fool believes loudness is strength. The Stoic knows that silence, patience, and clarity are far more potent and far more enduring. Conclusion: Stoic mastery over foolishness. Stupidity is not merely a lack of knowledge. It is a lack of control. It is the absence of reflection, discipline, and humility. Every foolish act stems from the same root: ego without awareness. Every sign of a foolish person: talking too much, fearing truth, blaming others, refusing to learn, chasing attention, repeating mistakes, confusing confidence with skill, and mistaking noise for strength, reveals the same underlying flaw: the surrender of self-mastery to pride. The Stoics recognized this centuries ago. They understood that the world is full of folly, but that one's response is within one's control. You cannot change how others behave, but you can change how you respond. Their arrogance, their noise, their mistakes, their illusions, these are not your burden. They are your opportunity. Each encounter with a fool is a test of discipline, patience, and clarity. Each provocation is a chance to cultivate mastery. The Stoic approach is deceptively simple, yet profoundly difficult. Listen more, speak less. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is where insight gathers its weight. The Stoic speaks only when it adds value, not volume. Words are tools, not weapons. Embrace truth, even when it hurts. Do not fear reality, for truth is a form of medicine. It exposes weakness so that it can be corrected. Calm acceptance of truth cultivates strength beyond argument, beyond appearance, beyond ego. Take radical responsibility. Blame weakens. Responsibility strengthens. The Stoic claims a realm of what is within his control and leaves the rest. By owning choices rather than pointing fingers, he transforms life into a landscape of power rather than prison. Learn constantly, even from mistakes. Experience without reflection is endurance. Wisdom arises from analysis, correction, and application. Repetition without learning is stagnation. Reflection transforms hardship into growth. Value competence over confidence. Let skill, preparation, and mastery define your authority. Loudness and certainty are illusions. They fade. True competence endures. Confidence rooted in mastery is quiet, firm, and unshakable. Act for purpose, not applause. Focus on improvement, not attention. Seek internal standards, not external approval. Progress in silence is stronger than applause and performance. Resist reaction. Cultivate composure. Strength is revealed not in how quickly you react, but in how deliberately you respond. Calmness in chaos, patience in provocation, and clarity in confusion are marks of true mastery. Outgrow arrogance through discipline. The root of foolishness is ego unchecked. Self-control, reflection, and deliberate action cultivate wisdom. Where the fool reacts, the Stoic decides. Where the fool performs, the Stoic masters. Where the fool seeks validation, the Stoic seeks alignment with virtue. Understanding these principles is not theoretical, it is practical. Every interaction with foolishness is an exercise in applying these truths. Every provocation is an opportunity to strengthen patience. Every insult, every baseless claim, every shouting voice is a chance to cultivate calm. Every error you witness in yourself or others is a lesson waiting to be integrated. Do not waste energy arguing with fools. Their minds are often closed, their habits entrenched, and their perception distorted. To fight them is to drain your own strength. Instead, rise above. Maintain composure. Preserve your energy. Protect your clarity. Let your calm outshine their noise. Wisdom begins when arrogance ends. Peace begins when judgment ceases. Strength emerges when discipline governs impulse. The Stoic path is not about controlling others. It is about mastering yourself. It is about becoming the person who is unshaken by noise, undistracted by spectacle, and untempted by appearances. In the end, life will offer no shortage of foolishness. Everywhere, voices will shout, pride will dominate, attention will be chased, and mistakes will be repeated. But you are not obligated to participate in this chaos. You are obligated to yourself, to cultivate your mind, your character, and your peace. Let the world burn with noise while you grow in silence. Let others stumble in reaction while you walk steadily in reflection. Let the foolish demonstrate their weakness while you cultivate unshakable strength. The Stoic does not seek to be admired. He seeks to be disciplined. The Stoic does not seek to be feared. He seeks to be steady. The Stoic does not seek to be right in others' eyes. He seeks to be right in his own. Your power is in restraint. Your influence is in mastery. Your wisdom is in calm. And in this, you rise above foolishness entirely. Not by argument, not by force, but by choice, by practice, and by the deliberate cultivation of virtue. In every encounter, ask yourself, will I react like the fool or decide like the Stoic? Will I chase applause or build character? Will I fear correction or embrace learning? Will I speak for noise or speak for truth? The answers to these questions define the measure of your life. They mark the path from ego to awareness, from chaos to clarity, and from weakness to enduring strength. Fools will shout. Fools will stumble. Fools will rage. You will rise. You will endure. You will master. And in your calm, your discipline, and your wisdom, you will demonstrate the ultimate truth. Silence, restraint, and reflection are louder, stronger, and wiser than any noise the world can offer. Wisdom begins when arrogance ends.